All right. Okay, so today's session is going to be about meditation and some of the meditation practices that lead to spiritual enlightenment. So, okay, should probably start on, this is a presentation I made. If you look on my page, you'll see that on campus, I did a presentation with a friend and I was introducing basically the movement and like what it's about. So basically, all of these meditation practices are designed to transcend suffering. And so like the way I would define suffering is, the resistance of the separate self. And the separate self is that inner, sense of existing, existing as an as a separate I, apart from reality, that causes us to, seek things outside of ourselves for satisfaction. And a lot of the time, like these things, these external things, whether that be people or attachments or status or whatever, are impermanent, right? As the Buddha taught in his Four Noble Truths, right? And, they're also not within our control. And if we don't get what we want, which we come to learn through the hardships of life, then we find that oftentimes without meditation and without inner work, we have no way of dealing with these things. And so from that place of negativity, we go out and act in very harmful ways that not only harm ourselves but harm other people. And this explains a lot of the like the political strife we have today, and why people can't seem to find a common sense of morality and happiness. Okay, so I'm just going to dive into some of the practices that I've used on my journey. Right, let me present. Okay, so the first one I want to introduce is something called the 6 R's. Now, this is a practice I learned from a Theravada Buddhist monk. He's actually an American monk called Bhante Vimalaramsi. Now, in Buddhism, like we have all these separate sects, like Theravada, which is the main, lineage in like Burma, Laos, Thailand, and I think Cambodia. But anyways, the reason why this practice became so famous within the Buddhist community, although it's still not as famous as practices like regular Vipassana meditation, or you can look up what that is. But basically what it is when we have any negative thought arise in our minds, oftentimes, like one part of it is that like we want to push it away, right? We want to push it away and, seek after external things that will help us alleviate the suffering, things that we want, like, whether that's sensual pleasure or love or whatever that may be, right? And that's what the Buddha called craving. Craving is, as Vimalaramsi defines it, is the I like it, I don't like it mind, that dualistic mind of, craving this and, avoiding that. But what Vimalaramsi also discovered was that there's another layer to attachment in the mind, and that is clinging. Now, what the Buddha said that, beings are forever trapped in the cycle of rebirth, both in the present moment and on a larger like reincarnation scale, because of this link between craving and clinging. They don't see that. And there was a story where actually the Buddha, with his closest disciple, Ananda said that like, oh, like, this process of craving and clinging, like, it's so obvious, like, why can't people see it? And then the Buddha said like, oh, don't say that. It's not good to say that, because like this is actually a very, very difficult thing to see. And these two links are part of a larger cycle that the Buddha taught called dependent origination, that you guys may have heard of if you're familiar with Buddhism. So, all right, so how do we actually do this practice, right? So what we can do right now, we're in a fairly calm mental state. But how it works is whenever a negative thought arises in the mind, first we recognize that it has arisen. We recognize when craving and clinging have started to form in the mind. That is the first step, recognize. And then the second step is release, right? So the release step is basically you don't give any further attention to it. Don't chase after it. Don't avoid it. Just let it be, right? And as you're letting it be, you'll feel your body. Whenever you have craving, it'll start to tighten up, especially in things like the head near the third eye area, or like the solar plexus in the stomach, and like your body feels very tight and uncomfortable. So you really want to release that initial like contraction like this whenever your body goes into like fight or flight mode, or it has any form of attachment. It goes from here, like in a calm state, to this. So you want to release that grip just a little bit. And then the next step, what Vimalaramsi discovered, is that even after you release that grip, and don't put any more attention to it, there's still a very, very subtle tightness in the background of the body and mind. And this is something that you have to like discern with practice of that tightness even existing. So what he said is that if you look at one of the Buddha's passages, one of the most famous passages, it's the sutta on mindfulness of breathing, right? Mindfulness of breathing. It's basically, as it's conventionally translated, using the breath to transcend attachment to your bodily actions or your feelings and whatnot. So what he said is that in that passage, there's a specific verse which says that he instructs us to tranquilize the bodily formation. And it's an action step. It's not just like a passive thing where like you start to become calm after relaxing with the breath. It's like, no, you actually have to relax using the breath. So how do we do that? Basically, after we've released that initial grip in the release step, you relax the background tightness. You relax your entire body and mind. And what'll happen, in my own practice, what'll happen if you do it properly is that you'll start to feel a sense of bliss and joy bubbling up from inside of you, and it feels very calm, very relaxing. The analogy I can give is like going into like a swimming pool on a hot summer day. It's like a very cool, relaxing feeling, and that's what it feels like when you do the relax step properly. So what he said was that after you relax, you actually have to change your state of mind. And the way you do that is a step called re-smile, right? So the re-smile step is basically, as your mind is clear, as you're free of attachment, you have to cultivate these factors of bliss and serenity within you. So what he said is that if you just lift the corners of your mouth a little bit as you're in that state, like you're smiling, and not only with your mouth, but like also try to smile like within your mind. If you kind of understand what I'm trying to get at, then your mental state really, really starts to change, and that coincides with what some of the verses that the Buddha taught in that sutta, which is, he says, I breathe in experiencing bliss. I breathe out experiencing bliss. So that's what you have to do. And then after that, basically, it's pretty easy. And then you return. The next step is return. So the return step actually relies on an anchor that we use in meditation. So this is something I didn't mention before, but I'll mention it now. Before you actually do the 6 R's, the foundation of this meditation is you focus on either an object, either A, the breath, which is what the Buddha taught, or another thing that the Buddha taught is you can focus on something like unconditional love or loving kindness or compassion, depending on whatever you want to cultivate. The reason why the Buddha, Vimalaramsi says the Buddha taught the breath is because during his time, many other yogis and like different traditions used the breath. So he used the breath as like a teaching tool, and the breath also acts as an anchor to show that, oh, when is my mind actually deviating? When is craving actually arising in the mind? Right? But he also said that if you use things like unconditional love or compassion, meditate on that as an object, then actually you can get to enlightenment a bit faster, because like it brings up that sense of bliss and serenity in you more powerfully. So the return step is basically after you do the initial 4 R's, you return back to your object of meditation, right? And then the last step is pretty easy. Repeat is just repeat the entire cycle over again. So yeah, any thoughts on this? Any questions?
I think this is great. I love the like, you know, technical explanation of the process that you're going to go through. That recognize, release, relax, re-smile, return, repeat. I think that's fantastic.
Cool. Just a follow-up question to that, where do you see yourself applying this in, like, what, in terms of like, let's say your psychological makeup, if I were to put it that way, like, and some of the specific emotional like attachments that you struggle with, because I'm guessing most of us struggle with these things. Like, how do you see yourself like overcoming like these attachments that you have through this practice?
You know, I guess I've been practicing for a while now, probably around like a decade. And you know, it's just, I feel like kind of what I do, but this will make it a lot more you know, a lot more structure to reflect upon, be a little bit more aware. It's like you know, I just see it as like, you know, in other systems they talk about there's like that stimulus response of what's going on, reactive living, and you want to create that space between ego stimulus pause response, and it's in that pause that we're able to, you know, return back towards you know, a sort of focus of our meditation. And so, you know, it helps me really to, you know, keep you know, like without losing my train of thought as easily. You know, not that I don't lose my train of thought, and not that doesn't happen often, but it really just allows me to, you know, bring more presence into, you know, whatever it is that I'm doing without, you know, reacting and, you know, getting carried away to where I'm not returning.
Right. Yeah, that was spot on, actually. Sushi, what about you?
I feel like I in last few days I guess I did all of them, but you know I didn't really know them. The one you said right now, like recognizing, release, relax, respond, return, repeat. I didn't know them, but I guess I did them. Or you know, last few days I crossed to my friends, and before the case I crossed my sister because she didn't make the 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 meals I wanted to eat. That's why I crossed her, and also I crossed my friends because they didn't do what I favor. You know, that's crazy. That- At the time, I tried to. I feel like there is something wrong with me. I guess that is the status you say recognizing.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with me? And I was really I couldn't control what I am feeling, you know. I just you already told me that just let you go, right? That's why I let it go. And after that, when I feel like I'm a little bit better, and I try to see them all back, why I felt like this and what happened to me to feel like this. And then
Hmm.
I feel at the time I feel a little bit more relaxed, and I could see it. Oh, that's why. And then I could be smile like you said.
Right.
But I'm not sure. Yeah, I did retain. I how could I say that? Mm, how could I say that? I could get them back. I mean, it's how can I say? I don't know how to say that one.
Yeah.
That is that. I mean that one. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that. Oh, nice. Another participant. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But you
Okay,
know,
Terrace. Pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you, Austin.
Nice. Yeah. So, for this session, we have one more participant than last time. So, we were just going over one of the first practices that I introduced. This was by a Theravada Buddhist monk. So basically what it is like a set of 6 steps where, you know, like when you have some sort of attachment in the mind, like how to distance yourself from it. And basically like after you distance yourself from it, you relax all the emotions in your body, and then you return to a feeling of bliss. And then like I explained that the Buddha taught this so that you could cultivate factors like unconditional love and compassion, while also seeing like when you're deviating from whatever factor you want to cultivate in the mind, whatever positive quality you want to cultivate, when attachment is arising in the mind. So it's just like a way of distancing yourself. I'm going to be recording this session, so later you can kind of go through the steps and how I explain it. All right. So the next meditation is yet another Buddhist one. In this session, I'm going to be teaching not only Buddhist meditations, but some of the more esoteric, like New Age types as well. But the reason why Buddhism has such a huge influence, because it allows us to see not only attachment in the mind, but also the overall unsatisfactoriness of finding happiness outside of ourselves. And another concept that the Buddha taught was that this unsatisfactoriness is foundational to existence itself, of like the outer flux of impermanent and uncontrollable things. And one thing he cited was like attachment to our physical body and sensual pleasures, right? So in this photo, you see like a Buddhist monk meditating on a rotting corpse, and going from like left to right, we first see like a youthful body with like full physical capabilities, and then after as the years go by, you start to become sick and you're not as good in physical shape, and then eventually
I like the
your
scavenger picture.
Sorry?
I like the scavenger picture.
Oh yeah. It's Buddhist pictures can get really brutal. Like especially if you look at like in Thailand, if you look at like pictures of like Buddhist hells, they're like really, really gory. It's like really gory stuff. Yeah. But anyway, going back, like it basically just shows like that the body is, even though we see other people like what depending on what our like sexual orientation is, we see the other people we're attracted to as like, oh, they're so beautiful, right, like physically, and then we don't see that really if you like just peel just beyond the surface of our skin, it's just like flesh and bone, and there's really nothing to be attached to here. And all of it, the main concept was not only that, but that all beauty, all physical beauty is going to fade, and there's nothing we can do about that. No amount of cosmetic surgery, that all that is temporary. And that is the concept of the Buddha taught there's there's a verse in the scripture that says
How many
that
slides do you have?
it's not a lot actually. I think I only have like 3 or 4 more slides after this. It's just like different practices. So I kept it pretty short and simple this time. I also made this presentation already for like a intro to my movement on campus. So yeah. Anyways, so in the scripture, there's a verse that says a Buddha comes to the earth to, not only teach people like suffering and the way out of suffering, but to teach the meaning of 3 words. The first one is called anicca, and I'm using this is a word in the language of Pali, the original language of the Buddha. And anicca, usually it's translated as impermanence, but that doesn't really get to the full nuance of the word. It's more like, anything made out of like what he called the 5 aggregates, or I think it's like forms, feelings, perceptions, consciousness. There's like a collection of it. But anyways, anything made out of like external things will never last to our liking in the long run. By the long run, I mean like, pretty much by the end of our lives, right? Like when we're nearing the deathbed, like everything will decay, everything will be taken away from us. All external things will degrade. And he said that our blindness to this fact is the cause of our, not only our attachment and our craving, but also our inner anger. When we don't get what we want, if even other people don't give us what we want, we lash out at them. We refuse to love them beyond things like physical appearance or status or validation. And that suffering that we're blind to is what he called dukkha. Dukkha is not only, in meditation, we feel it as a sense of inner discomfort and anger, but what he really wanted to impart was that dukkha is hidden. Dukkha is not suffering that is obvious, like, poverty or whatnot, like world hunger or in disease, like that's obvious, but it really is a lot deeper than that. So 2 words, anicca and dukkha, right? And anatta is, there's another word, lastly, anatta, which means that because of these 2 factors, we see that we're really helpless in this cycle of attachment, and that we really can't confide in these things, seek refuge in these things. These things are not our true essence. That is the meaning of anatta. So anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So I think there's a verse that says like the Buddha comes to the world to teach 3 words with 8 syllables. So anicca, dukkha, and then I think, anatta, right? So that's 8 syllables. So there's literally a verse like that. And now what we're going to do, I think, is, there is the example of physical attachment to the body, and how that creates the delusion of attraction and, disguises itself as our love for other people, or especially people of the opposite sex, whoever we're attracted to, or same sex, right? But I want to ask you guys here, like based on what I've talked about, what the Buddha revealed about existence, how does that manifest in your life? Do you think that there are aspects of your life where you've been blind to these facts? And how has that impacted your life, maybe either positively or negatively? Anyone?
Like you were saying, like how we're like blind to the negative effects of attachment.
Yeah, just these, like, and specifically like the 3 words that I talked about, like anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Like, how do you think that manifests in your life right now?
Because the anicca, that's the no self.
Anicca is things don't last to our liking in the long run, or conventionally translated as impermanence.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. That sort of like impermanence.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that, like, just because each thought just comes up, and then it goes, and that's where, you sit and you're, just letting them come by, and you're recognizing them and letting them pass. But you know, there's, you know, it does get off balance whenever there's, you know, the attachment, and things don't go your way. And this is kind of, you know, like the process of, or a process to, you know, just getting over it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And like that's what the Buddha allows us to do, right? Like release these inner resistances.
Yeah, you know, a thing too is because it's like we might be able to see this process, and we might even be able to do it. We might say, hey, you know, I'm too attached to my attachment. I'm not ready to let go. I'm just going to continue to cling. And you know, that's that sort of ego.
Right.
And yeah, that continuing to cling, it just, in the end, you know, it impedes our own progress along our path.
Yeah.
And so it's like the quicker that we can release, the quicker we can rise up to a new, you know, level. Because when we really set, you know, our highest intentions, you know, it's like when you look into the success literature, it's like, you know, what do you want to achieve and what are you willing to give up in order to get there, you know? And so that focus on the goal, I think, is, you know, one of the things that I see. But then, you know, other attachments will pop up in my life, like relationships or whatever, and, you know, I'll see that I, you know, focus changes, and, you know, I get attached to that. And then, you know, in the end, I go through this process to repatterning, you know, kind of get over whatever I'm having to let go of, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you mentioned, that in the end, you know, like what the Buddha also shows us is that, you know, that is the only way out. Another point which I emphasized earlier was that anicca is not only impermanence, but also it emphasizes the truth of decay and dissolution and degradation. Really, from something that is favorable and pleasant to something that is ultimately unpleasant. And here's the key takeaway of anicca, is that we can't do a damn thing to reverse that. That is essential to reality itself. Whether, let's say, you know, like you marry a beautiful spouse, and initially, like, they're really attractive and whatnot, and you feel like you're in love, right? You feel like you genuinely love them, but that's a form of deception, because that physical attraction is influencing you. But when you get into an argument, that completely, you know, a snap of a finger, it goes away, that so-called love, right? And then ultimately, as they start to get older and their looks wane inevitably, and, you know, they're on their deathbed, you see that, oh damn, like, you know, like that, you know, my attachment was ultimately ends in decay and dissolution. That's like that's like the core takeaway of anicca. Impermanence is a part of it, but it's also way more than that, right? So it's not necessarily pessimistic, because the Buddha showed us the way out and the refuge to seek, which is not in the 5 aggregates, or like 5 you know, the various manifestations of external objects that we can cling to, right?
You know, I've also started to kind of, you know, whenever I'm feeling, you know, that, you know, pain or whatever, I almost think of it as like, you know, like it's a wound, like I got my arm twisted up or something. And, you know, but, you know, sometimes we don't notice, but, you know, it's like I get attached to the story that, no, you know, my arm's supposed to be all messed up like this, or, you know, I'm supposed to be feeling this way.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that one of my Taoist teachers Buddhist teachers was telling him was that he's like, you know, would it be okay if you were able to release your attachment and get past this energy without having to have some sort of story about it?
Yeah. And those stories are our everyday rationalizations, right, for attachment. We believe that in the end, like, even though we're suffering right now, things will ultimately have a happy ending, when the reality is the exact opposite, right? Unless we seek the way out, right? Anyone else?
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Sushi, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, you know, I'm a little bit confused there.
Sure.
I already know those three things, but you know, there's some a little bit different things that I believe. What I understand is that our inner self reflect our outer self, right? That's
Yeah.
why, as a young girl, I want to be beautiful. You know, I want to be attractive. I want to be something special.
Yeah.
But when you said like that, those three things, I just feel confused. And there's just so many things that I'm building up for me and for my family, and at last for the people around me. And you know, when I hear those three things, I feel like to give up, and like I was like a running engine, like feeling
Yeah.
after I heard that, I feel like just stop it.
Yeah. It really just stops us in our tracks. And like, when I really delved into this additional aspect of Buddhism, this is actually not something I learned from like Burmese teachers, but from a Sri Lankan teacher. He said that, you know, the focus of these terms is dissolution in the end, unless we seek the way out. It's not necessarily like changing feelings and sensations that we feel like moment to moment. It's like a lot more than that. It's like it permanently changes the way we seek reality, and more importantly, like our worldly attachments, like you said, like whether that's our physical appearance, like, you know, you're young, like I'm also young, so like you know, like we obviously have that attachment unless we see these things. And also like the things we build up, you know, out of worldly necessity, like providing for our family, making a living for ourselves, getting a worldly education, right? What the Buddha said is that you, as a worldling, do not neglect these things. He emphasized the importance of being well versed in, you know, like the sciences or literature, whatever your contemporary society teaches you, and that even the Buddha himself, like, there was a story, like the Buddha was actually like a mathematical genius. He calculated like the size of an atom right down to like right now, like based on the description in the sutta, it's pretty accurate down to like a few decimal places. So like, you know, like the Buddha had like by today's standards, he probably had like a super high IQ, which explains like why he was enlightened. You know, it was easier for him to become enlightened, but I digress. Like, the point is that, like, you know, these worldly necessities, as a consequence of being born in this cycle of rebirth, you know, we have to do these things, and we can get a lot of benefit out of these things. Like, for example, right, as worldly necessity, you might have to engage in politics, right? And politics shapes your sense of morality, of good and evil. It tells you what virtues to cultivate and how to help people, you know, beyond their suffering, even if it doesn't have that like enlightened perspective. From its own limited point of view, it's still very helpful in that inner sense. So the Buddha said, like, oh, no, I'm not telling you to negate these things unless you want to become like a full renunciant, like, you know, abandon your family and worldly life and like become a monk. That's not for everybody. I don't personally, I'm not at that point yet. I don't really, there's a few things I don't agree with that, you know, outlook of renunciation. I could be wrong. So like, hey, but anyways, what he said was that as long as we don't get attached to these things from like craving and aversion, and we see what goes on in our mind, like again, going back to the 6 R's, as we're doing these, fulfilling these worldly necessities, then they're not really a problem. They're not really an obstruction, unless we want to go and like renounce everything, you know, which is like a very like 1% of Buddhist practitioners. Yeah. Anyways, that was really good. Terrace, would you like to add anything?
Okay, my turn.
Yep, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, in terms of meditation, I look at meditation a little differently. I grew up
Sure.
in a Ukrainian Orthodox Christian kind of background.
Mhm.
Hold on a second. I'm going to just give direction. I have a person helping me clean the house.
Cool.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so let me explain very quickly. So in the Christian churches, typically meditation is not a big issue. Meditation is not discussed. Meditation is not practiced. Prayer is practiced. Okay.
Right.
Now, typically in religious organizations, you have a certain belief system. Okay, and you have to adhere to it. Otherwise, if you don't adhere to it, you go contrary to the dogma of that particular religious belief system. Do we agree with that?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Now, it's good to give examples of the Buddha as in terms of meditation, because I believe that meditation has been obviously developed very well and to a huge extent with the Vedic, I guess, the monks, the gurus, and then subsequently to the Buddha, who continued on the lineage and the importance of meditation. My issue always is, how does it relate to our lives now? Okay. So I always bring to my life, like,
Sure.
I suffer from sometimes anxiety, I suffer from depression, right? How do I bring these things into my life? Now, one thing that is it Thet and Dason? Are you guys on? You might not be aware, but I'm a certified hypnotherapist in Manitoba, Canada, and I really applaud Austin for doing this type of work. I think it's really important, especially at such a young generation, to learn about spiritual awakening. And what I found is I take people on these journeys whereby I do this type of healing called the quantum healing hypnosis technique. In this healing hypnosis technique, it's developed, it's a past life regression technique developed by Dolores Cannon. We end up talking to your higher self. Now, the higher self or the subconscious is your spirit in a way, okay? And your spirit answers in third person. So like, for example, when the client when I'm working with the client, they will say he thinks, she thinks, whatever, to explain the situation. And we always ask, what do they need to do to address their depression? What do they need to do to address their stress? Stuff like that. Meditation comes through almost 99% of the time. Meditation is the answer. Meditation is the answer for addressing stress, depression, things like that. And I think that it's so key for your generation, especially your age group, with the amount of anxiety, the amount of pills that the young people are taking, to learn to meditate and avoid the pills. Why take the pills when you can meditate and calm yourself? Now, subsequently, because I kept on hearing all this about meditation, I personally meditate, and I am in the process of taking a Yogananda course on Kriya Yoga. And that is meditation incorporation with the breath. Meditation means also listening to God, okay? Prayer means generally begging God, talking to God. Now you can go into an altered state of consciousness where you can feel God, but in meditation, you can hear God, you can listen to God. And once you kind of go over that barrier of the idea of keeping nothing in your head to meditation with a goal of spiritual development, of spiritual awakening, a goal of growing yourself, meditation is the methodology that you go deeper. Now, the key thing in terms of meditation is that there are different levels of brain consciousness that you can affect in the meditative stance. You probably heard of these Vedic monks or whatever, that they go to a meditative stance where they do not have to eat or drink for like 2 weeks on end. Okay, so they're able to somehow manipulate their unconscious mind. So we have basically 3 types of minds. We have the conscious mind, and that's us discussing things on here. We have the unconscious mind, which basically means that we develop and we manage our breath, and that's what the unconscious. We are sitting here partaking in the Zoom call, and none of us is telling our heart to beat. None of us is telling our breath, our lungs to breathe. We do it unconsciously. Now, the third part of your brain is they call it superconscious or subconscious. And that is an area of your mind that you rarely access. You can access it through meditation. What I do is meditation with a goal. That's what I call it. And that is hypnosis. Okay, so you have a set goal. I want to see my guides. I want to talk to my higher self. I want to go into past life. I want to get a message from God, you know? So you basically go into a theta state whereby you are in a very deep meditative state, you know? So I think, like, for example, especially your platform, and I'm going to reiterate this until I'm blue in the face, I'm red right now, is that you got to, Austin, prepare your lectures to address the concerns of the students that you're living with, right? Like, I'm serious. What do kids nowadays take drugs for depression? What do they do?
Like, I don't know for depression, but like stuff like, I think ADHD or anxiety, like Adderall.
Adderall. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, before you're doing your spiritual awakening thing, is how, you know, do you want to learn how to get off Adderall? Right? And give them an example of how to do that in terms of a hands-on meditation experience. Right? Sure. So that they get a taste of what it is to calm their mind, so that it's not running all the time. You know? And like, we're living in a society where, especially in the US, you look on the TV and there's one fucking drug for every problem you have in life. Take this, except for so many side effects, right? That is not the solution. The solution is from within. The solution can be offered through meditation, through looking inside. So this is a behavior that needs to be implemented. This is a life skill. Meditation is a life skill that I just discovered recently, but all my clients get the big download from their higher self, right, that they need to meditate. And I ask them specifically, how much time do you need to commit to meditation? And basically, it's been like, the meditation's been, it's been like 10, 20 minutes. I did a Life Between Lives session, and that is where I go and between my reincarnations, and I go into the spirit realms, and I asked my higher self how much I need to meditate. And they said, for the next 2 years, you need to meditate 2 hours a day. Now, 2 hours a day, that's a long time to meditate. Yeah. Because especially keeping your mind not occupied and with nothing to think about and just focusing on your breath. So what I've incorporated instead is I've incorporated meditation with goal setting. So I mentioned to you a little bit about kind of like the super self course that I'm offering. Yeah. That I'd like to do a very quick plug to your group. Sure, go ahead. I'm developing a modality. I call it super self. And it starts off with meditation. It starts off with meditation, learning meditation. Some people call it self-hypnosis, but it's meditation to the theta state. You are in what's called the Esdale state. This is the deepest state that you can be. In this particular state, it's called the Esdale state because it's based on a doctor from India who in 1860s, he ran out of anesthesia. and he needed to operate on his soldiers. And we're talking like stomach operations, we're talking major operations. So he was able to educate them and teach them hypnosis in order for him to be able to do major surgery while the whole rest of their body, like while they could not feel the pain. And there is something that you may be aware of. There are dentists that are teaching, like hypnosis for dental surgery, which in a way is meditation again, because you're meditating to get into this relaxed state so that you can't feel the pain of the wisdom tooth being pulled out or whatever, or the surgery being done. So just as an aside, I really wish, I think somehow you need to kind of, what I would suggest? This is my crazy suggestion. I always come up with crazy suggestions. Find the most popular kid in your dorm, okay? Bring forward your ideas and run it by them how they would present it to their people. Okay?
Great idea. Yeah.
Is that a good idea?
Yeah, that's really good. It really gives a perspective of someone who's like a little bit not of this like space.
Yeah, because you're talking like the stuff that you're coming forward is good, it's valid, but it's not applicable. And you need to present it to kids that are applicable. If you have all the kids here who are in Adderall from your university, you should have like over 200 people participating on figuring out how to get off our Adderall.
Cool.
Right? And it's the same topic. You're teaching them meditation, but you're teaching them meditation with a purpose. You're not just going into this history. Like we've heard this so many times, like Buddha and his skill and everything. But how does it apply to you and your headache and your problem and the fact that you suffer from anxiety or depression or stress before an exam? Right?
Okay. I just want to interject a little bit.
Yeah.
What I will say is that earlier, I don't know if you heard it, but like, with I think Dason and that and whatnot, I raised a few examples. One is that like, our attachment, like for example, the partners we seek in life, like especially like marriage partners or whatnot, our attachment to, like the physical body and even like that mentioned something about like, she's doing these like daily chores and she wants to make a living and provide for her family and stuff. And then like upon hearing this, she feels like, it's like, well, life is pointless. I just want to give up. And then I said like, like the Buddha said that, these things are necessary, but we just have to keep in mind these existential truths. So I feel in a way like that is some like application in terms of like, especially their personal lives.
It definitely is, but it's not going far enough. I'll give you an example. With this idea of super self that I'm trying to create, this is all really deep meditation. This is all theta meditation that like I went through this study of the like the Sufi religion, the deep Vedic scholars. I looked at the Greek monks, what they are doing, and they all do the same stuff. They all do a meditation. They all do certain manners of prayer, but it's basically discovering what they're doing and then implementing it and making it simple for the public. Okay? You got to think that the public is dumb, right? And how do we make it so that we can attract them instead of focusing on esoteric belief systems, right? And one thing that is very attractive is when people do a meditation and they experience it.
Sure.
Okay? So,
yeah, I fully get your point in terms of like more, I think like like those, I understand what you're trying to get at. Like for example, with the Adderall example and like college students, things that they're currently struggling through. However, like the types of examples I mentioned, like making a living and whatnot, I think those are also like very universal. And one thing I will say is that, to add to your point is like, I think it really depends on like the demographic you are presenting to. Maybe let's say if you're presenting to people in like their mid 40s or whatnot, they probably care more about like, oh, am I gonna make my next paycheck, or like if you're presenting to you know, lower middle class people, like you know, like making a living, and how can I you know, not be so attached or anxious about this process, maybe they might care more about that. And then maybe if you're presenting to college students, they might care about, oh, how can I like do well on my exams, or you know, like maybe even find a romantic partner, things like that. I think it really depends here. I think for the purposes of this presentation, I decided to go a little bit more general, talk about like conventional, like worldly examples. And the, you know, because with this diagram, the physical body, physical attachment, everyone, sensual pleasure, everyone experiences this. So I decided to present it. But yeah, I definitely get your point. And making it relatable and understanding how someone who's not in this like spiritual community, like just like your average like college kid, like how would they see it? That's a very definitely a great point, and I'll definitely add that to my presentational style in the future. So thank you. Yeah, this is really helpful. If you don't mind, I would like to move on to the next one. So cool. All right. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into more esoteric material, and this may be kind of the practices that will go way over like the conventional public's heads. But you know, at some point, like I do want to incorporate this and build them up slowly to it. But the practice on the right is a little bit easier than the one on the left, which is like pretty advanced. So I'll go into it. It's basically self-inquiry. If you've Terrace, if you followed like, you know, Vedic gurus and whatnot, you've probably heard this practice. It's actually pretty simple. What it is, you know, like a lot of suffering, what modern neuroscience has discovered is that a lot of suffering is self-referential. So we're basically thinking about thoughts relating to ourselves, like, oh, am I going to, for example, am I going to succeed? Or how am I feeling right now? Or I'm feeling bad, or I'm feeling good. Is it that constant like I, me, my, I have to be this, I have to be that. And it's like, those are, there was a guy named Gary Weber who did this study. He basically said, he called it the blah, blah network. It's just like blah, 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 like the inner mind, like it never stops, right? And in meditation, what we're trying to do is shut that network down, like if possible, permanently, which is enlightenment. And the way he did that is rather than like calming the mind down through the breath or whatever, relaxing the mind, he said, go directly to the source. And that is dissolve the I thought. So this practice is very simple. Self-inquiry basically involves asking yourself questions relating to that I. So you can ask yourself, who am I, right? If you ask yourself, who am I, an answer might come up. Then you just see, like, is that really true? Or, you know, if we identify with a certain thing, can I let this go? Or even, can I let myself go? Can I let that self go, right? So it does tie into sort of the investigation that we talked about earlier. And another one he mentioned was, where am I in terms of your like present sensate experience? There may be like a certain feeling or a certain point, a certain thought that we identify. This is who I am at my core, like as a subjective experiencer. And then say, you ask yourself, where am I? And our attention automatically goes to that point. Like what you mentioned with like the subconscious mind and whatnot, Terrace. So you can say that, is that really true? Did we examine that point? It's like, maybe that's not our true self. In Vedic methodology, that's like the neti method, right? So it's like, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, right? And another question is, when can I let this go? When can I let myself go? Which I mentioned earlier. And or you can even ask yourself, why can't I let myself go, right? And then that leads into that line of investigation. Basically, you can ask yourself any like huge number of questions relating to the I thought and the I feeling. And basically what that'll do is, if you do that long enough, maybe for like even 30 minutes, your mind will start to quiet down and you'll start to feel a less concentrated sense of self. Yeah, so a question I would like to pose to you guys is, what sorts of identities do you know, mostly associate with life? What is your core identity? And like, if someone were to ask you, like, who are you, right, as a person, maybe one thing I would ask is like, how do you see yourself? How would you introduce yourself? And do you think that that's limiting you or benefiting you at this point in life? Yeah, anyone?
Well, for me, I'm like working on, the biomancer stuff that I'm developing. So it's like, that's, to me, that's what I am here doing, and but at the same time, right now I'm working in a lab, and I'm not so much making a business or a whole lot of activity, out in the world. So it's like, I don't want to be saying I'm all this, but I'm not really doing that. I don't know how exactly this relates to the meditation thing. How it's just like, that's something I see with like the identity.
Sure. You say, sorry if I didn't catch you correctly, but did you say that you don't want to identify with this, or you do?
Well, it's just, I guess, not wanting to come off as like boastful.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah.
Can I jump in here?
Yep.
Okay, on this particular graph, okay?
Sure.
Who amongst you three or whatever has felt their higher self?
Sorry, what?
Ethan, have you felt your higher self? That's your spirit.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I connect. As far as like speaking with my higher self,
yeah,
I don't know about that. Maybe like I've done some guided meditations and met some characters or something.
So you're kind of a little unsure, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I feel like I understand exactly, what it is, that I'm here to do, and I got a lot of clarity around it. I'm just like kind of trying to patch some holes in my framework, and
sure.
So
What about Seth? How does the higher self come to you? Is that girl's name? That's Dar?
Yeah, yeah.
Is she on? Okay, what about you, Austin? How do you feel the higher self?
Sure. Basically, my higher self is just like a background feeling. And what I notice about it is that it's very different from, like, for example, the contemplation or the investigation that I did, or even like the 6 R's or whatever. It's just like, there is no time delay, right? Like whenever I feel my higher self, it feels very distant from whatever like, inner struggles I'm going through. And I feel like that's the inner sense of bliss from which my life purpose comes from.
What is the feeling from the higher self that you feel?
It's very soft. It's kind of like in my heart chakra.
Okay.
I feel it's just like a sense of inner love, right? And also like,
describe the love. It's inner love. You see, right?
yeah, it feels like home.
Okay.
It feels distant from, in terms of like, it's like the background to all my experiences.
Okay. I take people to their higher self all the time. Okay. And the higher self comes in when the higher self is talking. The higher self comes in as a third person. So if we're doing a session with you, Austin, the higher self will say, he thinks, he does this, right? Oh. And the higher self is usually tough love. Okay. So the higher self is unconditional. it doesn't accept lies. Like if you're trying to kind of allude something or whatever to the higher self, to the spirit, it will not do that. It comes across total tough love. The other thing is, through the higher self, by accessing the higher self, you access the spirit realms. Okay, so you go higher through the higher self, because the higher self is connected to the Holy Spirit, or in Buddha they have a different kind of analogy.
Sure.
And that is interconnected to everyone. So this is how a true psychic works, is they are so in tune to their higher self that they bring in the information from the major Wi-Fi, you know, from the above the higher self is the Holy Spirit, and then they connect to your higher self that gives them the information.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's so interesting that what you mentioned, it's like tough love. You know, like when you look at, for example, like spiritual teachers, spiritual gurus, I find that the best ones are not just the ones that are like, oh, love and light and whatnot, but like, you know, the ones that like really call you out on your BS. And like, you know, there's one guy, Adidas Samraj. You know, some people accused him of a cult, and like, yeah, there's a lot of like shady stuff that went on, but he was very known for that. Like he balanced that sense of unconditional love to his followers, and also like challenging them, like, hey, like your unwillingness to love, like you have to examine that. And really just like sometimes, like, you know, a lot of his followers would like get upset at him. It's like how dare you, you know, like, you know, like how dare you challenge my ego. It's a lot of pride, right? As a spiritual seeker, like we also have that pride, and when a teacher like that challenges us, like we may get defensive if we're not developed enough. But yeah, I think that's a very good tool in terms of like, if you're not only for like accessing the astral realms or whatnot, but if the higher self gives us that, forces us to confront our limitations rather than being complacent, rather than just, you know, defaulting to, oh, like love and light, everything's going to be okay, just like coddling ourselves. It's like a very sort of a, not male energy, but it's like a masculine energy, right? We all have masculine and feminine energies, whether we're male or female. But like, yeah, I definitely believe that's very useful. One thing I do want to add with this self-inquiry process is this practice is a little different in that we're trying to reduce the amount of self-referencing that we have as possible. So like the higher self, we can say that's like a subset of the totality of who we are. It's a subset, right? And it's a very useful tool to tap into. But at the same time, ultimately, self-inquiry is about permanently transcending the self rather than like reinforcing it. Even though the higher self is useful, it is still a self, right? And what this method is just going beyond self at all.
No, not at all. Okay? Your higher self is your spirit.
Right.
Your spirit is connected to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is part of God. Therefore, you are part of God. You cannot get rid of God within you.
Right.
Okay? So, you know, this idea of getting rid of yourself, what I think Buddha was thinking about is getting rid of ego.
The false self. Yep. That's a
okay?
good point.
Ego is the monkey brain. Ego is Mr. Trump. Okay? Fear, narcissism, I want this, show off, all of that. That's ego. That is destroying that. That's what needs to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot destroy your spirit. Okay, so that's where you're wrong.
Yeah. I do want to interject here. Actually, this relates to Buddhism in that this is some of the modern day disputes that are going on. Traditional Theravada, right? Like if you look at like countries like Burma, Laos, Thailand, they believe that the Buddha, you know, wanted to completely eliminate the self. It's like, you know, all form of like any kind of self in meditation is like ignorance, pure ignorance, and like there's no such a thing as a true self. You know, all self is bad. That's like the modern day mainstream Buddhism, right? However, you know, recently I've been looking at some authors who say that that's completely BS, and that the original teachings of the Buddha did not actually teach that. He did teach a false self and a true self. So Terrace, if you are interested in that in terms of like religious studies, again, definitely share some sources with you. They're really, really interesting to look at. I personally actually gravitate towards that interpretation based on like personal experiences as well. And there's also like scriptural citations for why that might be true. Very interesting. It's a very interesting argument to look at. The Theravadins don't like it. They completely reject that. Say it's like it's BS. And then the the pre-sectarian guys or the original guys say no, Theravada is BS, and it's like a really messy argument that it gets really heated. But still, that's also like a line of interpretation. I think that also goes to show like there's so many different ways to.
I disagree about lines of interpretation. Okay.
Sure.
I believe that there is a truth and there is a untruth. Okay. There's your own interpretation. Like if you look at me, I'm a white guy. Okay. Sure. Austin, you're Asian. Now you can say you're kind of close to white, but it's not white. I can say I'm close to Asian, but it's not really Asian.
I'm like 100% Asian, so.
Yeah, so it's like truth is truth, right? Yeah. Now the problem is that what happens is that the way to address or feel the truth is through your experience. You can read everything that you can under the sun. You can read one person's interpretation, you can read another person's interpretation, but then I ask, are you in touch with source? Okay, where are you getting the information, right? When you're getting the information from source, the truth comes forward. Okay, and that's how you get that that's how you're confident in what you're saying. I'm saying this stuff because I work in this area of the subconscious all the time. Nobody accesses the subconscious. I'll give you an example today. Okay, today I did a session with the guy. He was trying to deal with his idea of shame. For some reason, he couldn't deal with his shame. Now, in normal cognitive behavioral therapy, what they try to do is they have these methodologies of minimizing shame and stuff like that, somatic body release, all this methodologies. What do? I go to source. Okay, I go to his divinity. So where does his shame come from? His shame came from past life experiences. We took the feeling, we used a methodology called affect bridge. So I took his shame, and in deep theta state, I took him to the first time he felt that shame. And it was in a life where he felt his ancestors, and he was involved in Transylvania, and his ancestors were imprisoning and killing innocent people. And he had to live with that. And that particular life decided to go against what his ancestors stood for. And because of that, he died by guillotine. He was like, that was his death date. So then I go, how am I going to deal with this, getting the shame away from my client, right? So we have to go to a stage called forgiveness. Now, in hypnosis, there's a methodology of doing forgiveness therapy. And one of them is bringing adult self. There's all these psychological methodologies that you can apply, right? I go away from the psychology. I go to source. I ask him, does he have a guide or a guardian angel that can come to him and can provide him comfort and help him with his feelings of shame, and act for forgiveness? And you know who shows up? Jesus. So Jesus came, showed up, touched the man, and we asked that he forgive his ancestors for their actions. Would Jesus be willing to do that? And once he forgave the actions of the ancestors, the feeling of shame dissipated. So today, like for example, I called my client, I said, how are you feeling? He goes, I'm light as a feather. I'm having the best day of my life. Right? So here in an example is, you're talking about the evolution of spirit. And here it is, you can look at all these different graphs and everything. And what I try to always reiterate, and this is my permanent message, is that you need to experience this. You need to experience it so that you know what the truth is. And then from the truth, you can look at the literature and you can say, this is bullshit. That is bullshit. This doesn't. Like, for example, atheists can talk about all they want, about the fact God doesn't exist or whatever, they have never experienced anything.
That's so true. Yeah.
Okay. And they can argue better than you can that God doesn't exist. And their arguments are valid on an intellectual, model. Right. And then they say that no one has gone to the other side to prove it. No, but people are experiencing this through meditation.
Yeah. I just want to add something here with the atheist discussion. Uh, I had an interview. One of the very first interviews I did on my channel was with a guy named Zen, and he taught this teaching called unspirituality. So basically, what he was trying to do, he's like a quote unquote, like you would call it a materialist, right? And what he said was that all of these past life stuff and inner child and higher self stuff, like what he says that that's just a product of our biological evolution, and that they're like they're inner archetypes created from our evolution. And what his teaching was is that he had like a profound Kundalini awakening where he had all these like crazy ass like visions and whatnot. It's a pretty radical story, but what he, his whole teaching was about like, debunking these new age teachers who kind of preach like a higher self and whatever past life stuff like that. He said like, oh, that's all biological. And then like his whole argument of like, oh, neuroscience studies show that yada, yada, yada. But what was so interesting is that unlike regular atheists, he had that like crazy ass like Kundalini awakening. So like he said that I'm not just talking out of my ass. It's like I actually have these like experiences to back it up. And yet,
so how can he be an atheist?
No, but because his explanation of this higher self and like inner child work and stuff is like, it's not like actual realms and astral realms and stuff. It's just like archetypes created from our like, our brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he explains it. And like God and stuff.
So he
like
hasn't grown from there.
Yeah.
He's basically he had a bit of a glimpse, right?
Right.
And he hasn't grown from there. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, like I do disagree with him on a lot of points.
Then the book is closed, right?
Yeah. But it's so interesting, like just how like the different types of like spiritual, like you can have that kind of like God experience or whatever and have like a completely different takeaway from it, depending on how strong your like beliefs are. And okay, to his credit, like he does cite like studies that say like, for example, like near death experiences. He tries to show that like, oh, that's like, I don't know what his argument was, but it's like, oh, like there's no actual, what was it, like there's some brain activity, or I don't remember. But basically what he said was like, he also, to his credit, he also had not only Kundalini awakening, but also like out of body experiences. Like he said that ever since he was a kid, like he would have like frequent out of body experiences all the time. And yet he still said that it's just part of the brain. I don't know. But like, whatever. I mean, like, as long as he has evidence, like we should still say, okay, I mean, like examine it, see if it's true, make your own decisions. But I digress.
I'm thinking he probably just hasn't studied too many ideas of God to find one that he's satisfied with.
Yeah, he kind of, still with the belief that like God's just a bearded man in the sky kind of thing. So, but anyway, yeah, I do want to move on. This next one on the left, this actually gets into sort of the higher self that you were talking about, Terrace. This is one of the most advanced spiritual teachers I've met. The reason why I say that is because he has like a lot of history of like abuse with his students. So yeah, on that side, he has a lot of issues. But however, in terms of like exploring the inner realm, god damn, like this, he's a really, really advanced spiritual teacher. His name is Anadi. If you look him up, he took down his website for controversy and stuff. But, what his whole teaching is that challenging his spiritual path was born out of challenging this idea of like, you have to, enlightenment is like the complete dissolution of the self. And what his counter argument to that is like, if you don't even have a self, if you don't even have a foundational self that you can embody moment to moment, then how can you even talk about transcending a self? What he said, that's like, the way he put it is like a bunch of idiots repeating the same stuff, right? That's what he called like, the modern like Advaita non-dualist, like Indian or even like Buddhist gurus. He has a very negative impression of them. still does, but and it shows like just how complex his if you look at this diagram on the left, what it is his teaching revolves around the idea that in every in each and every moment we have this background feeling of subjectivity, this sense of existing, this sense of looking out at the world and being a separate self. He says that that's not something to be avoided or removed, that actually has to be cultivated, but also expanded into impersonality. So what his teaching was is that not only must you cultivate that sense of me-ness, that sense of like I am, beyond thought. Like with the other, like the self-inquiry technique, that was more like mental. It's like, who am I, where am I, just like ideas and feelings and impressions. This is different. This is just like a background, non-intellectual feeling, pure feeling sense of existing. If you, okay, just to experiment, all of you close your eyes right now. Just close your eyes, and I want you to just feel on a like in a feeling sense. Where is that sense of me in the background? Just that sense of existing, me. And where is it centralized? Where is it focused, concentrated? Not as an object, but as your very inner self. Not an idea, not a thought, just that pure subjectivity. This is a very important term in his teaching, pure subjectivity. Just feel it. Okay, now open your eyes. For me, I've also practiced under his teaching for quite a while now. I feel it like in the back of my like eyebrow eye area, like right here, as like looking out at the world. That's like what he calls, in his teaching, it's called conscious me. So in his diagram, you can see that it's conscious me. And then Terrace, what you said about the subconscious, that's a little bit above that area. It's kind of the space where like our mind and like mental activity is working in the background, but it's also like very intuitive. It's also the intuitive mind. But what he said was that each and every center, there's many, many different centers of subjectivity in the body, that feeling of I-ness, me-ness, right? If that's a word, for lack of a better term. And he says is that enlightenment, what enlightenment is awakening all of these centers and integrating them as a unified whole. So already the premise is very advanced. Here's another thing I want to introduce is that after you cultivate that sense of me, that feeling of me, you have to expand it and transcend it into impersonality, from personal, from me to the background of existence, what he calls I am. So the integration of me and I am, right? I am is impersonal, the background of existence, the source of existence. So only when we unite me and I am, he said, can we realize our higher self, our true self, beyond the ego mind, right? Okay, so I do want to try another experiment here, which is close your eyes again. Just close your eyes again, and then feel your sense of me. And what you should feel is some of your attention is in that spot, like, for me, I feel it like between my eyebrows and my eye area, behind that area, like sort of like looking out at the world. There's also a space behind that, an empty space behind that, and it's near the back of your head. It's kind of expansive, right? And that, what he said is that is the bridge to what he calls, one of the centers he calls consciousness, right? And he said that consciousness is the first step to transcending the monkey mind. So what I want you to do now is, as you're feeling that sense of me, try to move towards that expanded space behind your head, like behind your physical head. And then see if you can feel that sense of me behind your head. See if you can still feel that sense of me behind your head. That pure feeling, that pure subjectivity, the sense of me. And then after that, I want you to go even more behind your head, even more towards the space behind your head, and sort of like an expanded area. And you'll start to feel a very empty space, kind of like a void, an empty void, like where there's like, you know, the very darkness of space where there's like nothing there. And yet somehow your sense of me is somewhat connected and pulled towards that. It's being attracted by an unknown force. And what we're going to do is what is that? What is that space? So feel that bridge between me, that feeling of me behind your head, and that void, the I am of consciousness. The void, absence, what do you call it? The presence of me versus the absence of the impersonal background of consciousness. Now, as you do that, once your feeling of me has been solidified behind the head, where it's fairly stable, I want you to really let go, just let go, release that feeling of me surrender it into that void space behind your head. Just let it go. And what you should feel, I'm gonna open my eyes again. What you should feel in this diagram as it's portrayed is, if I look at I don't know if the camera catches this, but behind my head, you should feel your sense of me around right here, right? Just like behind the head. And as you let go, initially the sense of me is right here. And then as you surrender, it goes out like a balloon, like an expanding balloon, whoosh. And then it stabilizes into the void. And what he says is that if you do this properly, it doesn't feel like, you know, your sense of me like floating in space. It feels literally dissolved and integrated with that absence, that feeling of emptiness, nothingness. That's what it should really feel like if you've really solidified that. And from there, you access your soul. And how he defines soul is the bridge between me and I am. Me being the personal feeling of self, pure subjectivity, and the I am as the impersonal subjectivity of reality, of the universe. And consciousness is one of those bridges to that. So right now, I just want you to feel that again. Feel that sense of me behind the head. And now feel the absence, the void, the emptiness beyond that of consciousness. And now again, once again, just to solidify it once more, let go. Let that sense of me go into the void, the empty space. And if you surrender far enough, it shouldn't just be floating, but it should dissolve. And you'll feel a sense of emptiness. And more importantly, if you do this right, your mind will quiet. Your mind will really, really quiet down. Because what he says is that most people are identified with the fluctuations of the mind. And because they don't have an anchor beyond the mind, that's why they're not enlightened. That's why they're stuck in monkey mind. All right. Any thoughts on that?
For me, whenever I do it, like, it seems like whenever I release it, it just naturally shoots like straight up to the top of my head and kind of dissolves into like the pillar of light.
Oh, so you feel it at the top. I see. That's interesting. That's a different center. He does mention it, but if you do it right, like the center I'm talking about, that's like the crown chakra and like the ball of light like above the head. That's different. What he's talking about is going behind the head to the back of the physical head. And it doesn't feel like a radiating ball of light. It feels like an empty void.
Gotcha. I'll have to give that one some more practice and see what I can experience.
Yeah, it took me months to even understand like what he was talking about, because like when I did my first session with him, I had no idea what he was talking about. Like these concepts take a long time to, like, his teaching is I've never seen anything like it, honestly. Although I don't agree with some his like conception of enlightenment, it doesn't cover everything, but damn, man, like if he's like 1 in a billion in terms of like his unique approach.
What was his name again?
Huh?
What was his name again?
Oh, Anadi. Anadi.
Gotcha.
He changed his name recently to AADI Adi. It was because he had some stuff about him was exposed recently about like sexual abuse with his like students and whatnot, and yeah, and now he's not really teaching anymore. But yeah, I got to experience his teaching while he was still like 2 years ago. So yeah, this is like everything I've retained. But yeah, well, Terrace, what are your thoughts, especially because you're a lot of experience with the higher self.
Okay. Okay. It says here, Christoph Nawanadi always wanted to be a guru, and he was always heavily into the women. He was intelligent, and in the 90s, he said that he visited some good teachers in India. So I'm not surprised he had some knowledge, right?
Yep.
However, his attitude towards women and girls is pretty shitty, right?
Yeah, it is.
Anyways, okay, getting to real shit. This is where, again, I'm going to reiterate this fucking so many times that you're going to get sick of me, right? Don't go looking for these crazy teachers, okay? It's all in you. It is all inside you, okay?
Sure.
So let me explain. When I was coaching people how to access their higher self, and the conscious mind is what we have right now. We're discussing things and everything. There's no point for you to address which part of your body is the conscious mind. Like we were doing this experiment, and right away I was thinking behind my eyes. Like I wasn't considering of my heart, right?
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
So obviously you got to be very careful of what does that mean. Where does the ego come from? The ego comes from the mind. This comes on, hey, you've got a better car. I want to keep up with the Joneses, all of that, right? It is not a spiritual experience. Where is the heart, How, if you're making your decisions like based upon your heart, you won't go wrong, especially if you're going into this kind of idea. Now, when I was coaching people in the high to address their subconscious, in this one particular sessions, I would ask them, we are now, can I talk to the subconscious? And prior to that, the way that I would teach them is that if you were to pick up your head, hands up, your subconscious is just up over top of your fingers, right?
That's pretty high.
That is where the spirit kind of is. Now you need to bring it into you so that you are thinking of through the higher self. And that's where mine was for the longest time, until I went and talked to an angel channeler, and I asked her, where is her subconscious? Like, where's her higher self, right? And she goes, it's just above my head. And I go, what do you mean? Because mine is much higher. And she looked at me and she goes, well, your crown chakra is all screwed up. You've got these saloon doors that are basically not permitting the information to be processed. They've got like an in, but it's not an out. You want the information to be. So we work together, and suddenly I'm starting to feel it like right over here.
Nice, yeah. And
then what I do is during the experience of working with a client, I tell them, okay, you can bring it in from there. And what you'll find is that it comes down quicker the more you spiritually awaken. You have a more sense of self, of your higher self, and you're able to then bring it into the foreground with respect to that. So, you know what? I will honestly tell you, please, I think by you quoting these idiots like Anadi or whatever, although he might have an interesting kind of methodology that he learned or taught, it just takes away from the true beauty of what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, self-reliance. Sorry, I'm charging my computer here, so.
You're charging your what?
I'm charging my laptop here, sorry.
Okay, you're about to die, right?
Okay, I'm back. Yeah. I would like to add to that. The reason, like a lot of the reason why, I explore these teachers. One is perspective. like even though like my higher self is like really, really helpful, obviously it's like the core of why I do what I do, why I'm passionate about this movement and whatnot, the source of my love for life, you know, what all of these teachings, it's just like different angles and perspectives, right? Like although we have this like static part of us that like no matter what happens in our life, we're always at home, we're always at peace, and that's the source of our highest intuition. At the same time, we can also learn so much from exploring outside of ourselves and challenging our perspective, see where on a practical level, like what are we not seeing, right? And these teachings, like it's just like little fragments of like how to do that, like and it's always like that's what the role of the spiritual teacher is, and is like to challenge our blind spots, you know.
Yeah, but you got to have those experiences, right? And the thing is, you're approaching it from a real kind of a belief angle, a religious belief angle, and not an experiential angle. And maybe I've gone a little crazy on the experiential angle. I'll be honest with you.
Oh no, that's
having these experiences, and they blow me away. Like when I had this Jesus experience, sure. I'm as excited as the client, right? And it doesn't mean that I invoked Jesus. Jesus came to him.
Yeah,
all it was the witness, and I had the privilege of sitting there and witnessing his experience.
Right.
Which is like you've got a front row seat, you know? So that's where the key is. So that's why, like, you know, can we get that Anadi map diagram off here, please?
Okay, yeah. Right. You don't like diagrams, I get it. So
okay.
Yeah, I understand. Just so if other students on here like want to explore further, just like different centers, I was going to go into like two other ones. Mainly one is like the heart chakra. He talked about with the heart, what he talks about like feeling that that point in like the center of your chest, that like sense of warmth. And what he said was that with his teaching, you know, like those centers actually aren't just like impersonal objects within your body, that really it actually has a sense of me. There's actually a sense of self behind that. And you know what his emphasis was is that like we have to actually embody and stabilize it. We have to become it, not just see it as something that's separate from us. Like you know, it's not just like a chakra as like conventionally taught. It's a center of ourself, and we have to like constantly be embodying that.
Well, that's yeah. If you can bring your higher self and live your life from your higher self, forgoing your ego, forgoing your conscious mind, that is the path towards enlightenment, 100%.
Yeah. And also, Terrace, I don't know if you're familiar with Dason. I think I talked about like because he does a lot of like qigong work. I think like the concept of the dantians, like in like Chinese medicine.
I'm not familiar with that at all. No.
Yeah. I just want to go back to like what we Dason and I talked about. Is that like there's like 3 points, like, you know, as the Chinese describe, like, you know, like above the head, like he mentioned earlier with like the ball of light, the heart chakra, and then also another one I want to explore a bit here is like the one, it's below your belly button. And what it does is like that space, like, you know, below our body, it's kind of like the void, right? It's a very impersonal absent space. And what it does is like it basically calms our entire body mind down, you know, like prevents us from being like overly attached, overly agitated, just gives us a sense of stability. So like if you, for example, if you feel, you know, your sense of self, what you can do is that you can actually feel that sense of self in your, like below your navel area, right? And you feel it kind of being pulled by the gravity of the earth. And then if you just surrender that sense of self into that space, like in the core of the earth, what you'll feel is that you'll feel like a very, very big like void. You just feel your sense of self, and then like just even you can even use your breath. What Anadi recommends is that feel yourself below the belly button. Just breathe a little bit into that area. And then after that, just exhale and like push that sense of self like into that space in the earth, push it into the earth. It's like exhale and like push it out.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll feel is like it's like kind of like a stream just starts to open up. A stream of subjectivity just starts to open up and like penetrate the earth, and then it dissolves into like a very, very large void, a sense of groundedness.
Mm-hmm.
And what Anadi described in his journey was that was a very profound point for him, and that he had to do like hundreds of attempts in order to like really get it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just an interesting point. What he's saying, also another point he emphasizes is that it's not that like, oh, you have to feel this and feel this center and that center and that center. Ideally, what it is linking all of them together and feeling them as a unified reality,
Mm-hmm.
as a unified higher self or soul, as he calls it, right? Rather than being it being disjointed, because you obviously cannot feel all of these externally at the same time. And that's what he calls like external attention. Well, external attention is the attention we use to like observe thoughts or like look at objects. It's like it's focused on objects, and whereas he teaches pure attention, and pure attention is attention that is used to specifically feel the self. And with pure attention, what he says is that once these centers are awakened and opened, we don't have to put our focus on them. They're automatically anchored in these spaces. And that's how our higher self is maintained as a unified reality without us having to like artificially like focus on it, artificially be it. Yeah. Just a very interesting teaching. I do want to move on now. The next one will be my final practice for the day. Let's see. Presentation. Oh, there you go. Okay. So this one is more of an energetic practice. And this one's also very profound, but much more simple than like Anadi's teaching. Anadi's was probably the most advanced one that I've shared today. What this one basically is about is accessing an energy that allows us to transcend the tightness of our separate self. So with this teaching is more along the lines of the traditional Indian guru types, where like, the self is bad and the self must be completely dissolved. This is more along those lines. So what it basically is it, rather than examining thoughts, like in Buddhism, they teach the concept of like impermanence and we have to investigate reality and see our attachments. This one like bypasses all of that. This teaching basically says that all of that is like not going to the root of suffering. That examination can only take you so far. And what this is we're permanently dissolving our resistance to reality at its root, no matter what experiences we're having. And the way, there's an author, his name is L. Ron Gardner. He runs his own Facebook group. I really, really love his books because he debunks many of like, in the new age, there's so many platitudes, like, just be in the now and like watch your thoughts and stuff like that. All of this, what that author said was that like, those are very like superficial teachings for the masses, and they don't.
Who's this?
L. Ron Gardner. I don't know what his first name is. It's like L. dot, and like he's like abbreviated his first name, and then Ron Gardner. Now, let me put it in the chat here. What was that? Okay.
I think I was reading his stuff this week.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, and he used to be or applied as a lawyer or whatever. Oh, it's like L. Ron
Lawyer.
Gardner. Okay, no, not
Don't know about that.
Another guy.
Okay. Yeah. Beyond the, I don't know if you see in the chat for everyone.
Beyond the Power of Now. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, that's one of in that book. Basically, like, you guys probably know Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Very popular teacher. Basically, in this book, like he just completely like shits on his teachings and saying that like they're just like really superficial. Like it doesn't go to the energetic reality of enlightenment. And like if you like to keep things like, if you're a keep it simple, stupid kind of guy, then like he just really comes up as like condescending and like self-aggrandizing. However, I have learned a lot from his style, even though it's very confrontational. Yeah. In terms of like intertextual analysis, like with other traditions, he does a lot of that. His articles are really great if you look on his website. But anyway, I digress. I want to now dive into his core principle. And what is that? He basically says is that in most spiritual teachings, especially New Age teachings, the common conception is that you have an attachment come up in the mind, whatever feeling comes up, and then in order to release that resistance, the common conception is that all you have to do is let go, right? That if you just let go of the feeling, you'll be relaxed, and that's the way to enlightenment. What he says is that that's only half of the equation. So it's not enough to just let go. What he says is that as you're letting go, you actually have to be present to your current experience. And what he said is that presence is not just like observing thoughts and whatnot. You actually have to have a little bit of force. What he says, a bit of conscious force in even feeling your entire body mind, the space around your body. And once you have that force, what he says is that you can, what you talked about, Terrace, with the energy of the higher self, like above the head, and Dason also mentioned that, what he says is that you can literally pull that energy down into your body so that it pours down like a glass of water into every cell in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And he said is that is how you actually dissolve the ego mind, not just by like observing thoughts or investigating thoughts and seeing like the dangers of attachment. That's like what he said is that although that's good, that's secondary. That's not the core practice. He said that also. He also claims that this is actually what the Buddha taught. Again, here we have another angle. You see, like if I actually went to, back in December, I went to Myanmar and I introduced this, and then the monks were like, I don't really know what to feel about this. This seems like an Indian yogic technique. I'm like, no, it's like, what he said was that the Buddha actually taught this, and then they're like, I don't know about that. But,
Okay,
like
let me
that,
explain the story I have, and this is interesting about Ohm's law or energy, conscious presence. One of my past lives, can I take the floor because this is
Sure.
very topical.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of my past lives, I was an apostle, and this entity or whatever, this person, he was kind of like, I figured out that I got a year, it was kind of 1382 or something like that. I lived in, the feeling was Lisbon. I was like a Franciscan monk, but I was not part of the church. And I would walk around in a hemp, kind of like a monk's outfit with a kind of a covering. And all I had was the beads, kind of the rosary beads, and I had a wooden cross. So I had no money, no family, no nothing. All I had was the love of God. Okay. Now, this particular life was a life of servitude to God. He had no belongings whatsoever. And then subsequently, because of what he was starting to do, he was imprisoned, and then I was quartered. Okay, so I went through this experience of being quartered, and I actually almost jumped off the bed because, are you familiar with the term quarter?
No.
What happens? Okay, so they basically wrap leather rope or whatever around your arms and your legs all separately, and then they have 4 horses that run in 4 different directions, and they rip you up.
Oh shit, it's that one?
Yeah, that's called quartering. Okay, so that happened to me. And while it was going on, like typically, like when I deal with past life regressions and everything, the client never jumps off the bed. I literally jumped off the bed because I could feel the moment of separation. But yet, the interesting part about that experience was that I didn't feel the pain, because just prior to the pain, and this is very interesting, prior to the pain, the spirit knows the pain is coming, and the spirit takes you you go into the spirit realm without feeling the body, right? And then you just watch yourself being quartered, right?
That's reassuring.
I never worried about that. Now, I decided I talked to an angel channeler, and she raised this life again. She said, during that life, you were channeling all the time. You didn't have discretion. right? Or discernment. And you were just channeling and you were seen as a threat, right? And so I decided to do a past life meditation into that life. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about, meditation with the goal. And I wanted to feel the energy that he had in terms of channeling. Okay. So I go, like, basically when you're having a past life experience, has anyone had a past life experience in the group?
I have not.
No.
I'd love
Okay.
to.
Okay. So what
Yeah,
happens
maybe.
is that you actually feel you are that person. You're not watching it from the side, you are actually feeling it. Okay, so if you have any kind of the feelings of greed, you have the feelings of blessings, shame, whatever, forgiveness, you are actually feeling it. Okay, so I wanted to feel what it feels like to channel from his perspective. And the first lesson is humility. Okay, so humility means removing the ego mind. You are not part of this process at all. You as the id, you as the ego, you are not a part of it. You need to totally humble yourself. Humbleness does not mean that you're an idiot. Humbleness is the understanding, the true love of God, and understanding that God is in control of everything, you know, and that you are nothing. You are just part of God, a very small part of God. So the feeling I got is that he kind of goes into this meditation of humility, and then this energy starts coming through his crown chakra, and I could feel the energy coming in, and then it comes in right through the hands. So you feel this huge amount of energy, and then the visions were coming forward as to what I was doing with the energy. And so I go to one of the instances where it happened, and it was a dead baby, and the couple was really upset. They brought the dead baby to me, and it just died just recently, you know, and I was able to bring it the breath of life. I brought it back to life. Okay. And that was in that methodology. Then I had another experience of a young boy who had a problem with his arm or with his collarbone or something, and I was doing the same thing for him. And then I had a lady with a problem with her leg. She had, like, one leg was too short versus another. She had a broken leg, and I helped her heal her leg. And then the final vision I had was I was walking in a forest, and this very wealthy carriage was coming along, and I was just like enjoying nature and communing with nature. And in the carriage was a wealthy couple, and a lady was about to give birth. So they stopped me. They thought I was a doctor, or asked if I could help. I helped them because I delivered babies in the past. I was very conscious of that. And because I successfully delivered their baby, they gave me a little bag of money. Okay. And then the next couple that was coming, I noticed they were very poor, and I gave them the money, and the husband said, "What are you, a fool to give this money to us?" And the wife thanked them, and I said, "I don't need it. You know, it doesn't mean anything, right?" So then I jumped in the lake or the river and just communed with nature. But in this particular example, the force I felt, the conscious nature of the spirit, is definitely came through the crown. It came into my intention of what I was trying to do. Okay. And I was just the tool, the instrument. I was not the originator of the energy. All I was doing was I provided the vessel to do that.
Yeah. Speaking about that, like you talked about like healing with that energy. I've been doing a lot of research into like original Christianity and like what Jesus taught. I found the exact source for that. I'll send it to you later. It's basically this information came through a medium, actually, like a psychic medium, and what she relayed was
Came through what?
it came from a psychic medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what she relayed was like Jesus's original intention. And what she talks about actually is that radiant energy of like God, and how Jesus says is that you can actually use that to like heal the sick or like raise the dead and like revive the dead and stuff like that. She actually mentions that. So it's so interesting. Like it's a huge coincidence that you've also had these experiences to corroborate it.
Yeah, I believe it's the same. And I believe like Buddha probably did miracles. Obviously, he didn't
Yeah, he
become
did.
Buddha
Yeah,
just
so
because of nothing, right? You know, but he was, again, the humility and everything like that to be able to create
right.
and do that and to be able to understand that. So humility is the big lesson there, and the ability to also process it. Like if you have these techniques and you understand what you're kind of doing, you're able to, he obviously, my guy was a big channeler. So he obviously was able to meditate and open his mind for that energy to come through,
Right.
or open his crown chakra. And the energy, when it came through, it was like a white light coming through. But
Yep.
you're talking
That's
like
exactly it.
major volume. You're not talking just like a little spark. You're talking like it controlled you, right?
That's spot on. Actually, we're actually going to do that right now. For me, with this technique, funnily enough, I had to do it for 3 months in order to actually start feeling like that level of energy, because I read Gardner's, like Mr. Gardner's work, and then I tried it. I was so frustrated because I couldn't feel like anything at all. And then like, I think it was because like I didn't get like the presence right or whatnot, but like right now I can do it like pretty much, on the spot. So basically, if we're gonna try this right now, it's very easy. All you do is first feel your breath. Like really try to like breathe in from like your belly, really deep breaths in and out. And as you're breathing, I want you to be present to the breath. Actually feel like you're one with the breath. And you want to feel it as like a cycle, almost like a loop flowing through your body. If you see the diagram on your left, that's kind of what it should be like. And as you're doing that, if you really do it right, you'll feel it not only go down from like the front of your body, which he calls like the frontal line, but also it should actually curve back up towards your spine. It goes down the front of the body, like, and then turns at your like, like butt area, and then goes up your spine into the head. And that you should start to feel a radiant energy, quite a strong energy as you're doing that. Be present to the breath again. Deep breaths. And once you feel quite a bit of force with that energy, just let go of all tension in the body. And when you let go, if you do this right, you'll feel it literally ripping through like your frontal line and your chest as well, like your chest area. The reason why that is if you look at this diagram with the little S curve, what that is that the yogis say that that is that heart on the right. If you look at like that shining like orange heart thing, it's there's a spot like 2 finger digits to the right of our chest. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. Your guys' window like disappeared all of a sudden. I don't know why, but anyway, what the yogis discovered was that our sense of self, our root sense of self, unlike what Anadi said, they actually say that it comes from a spot to the right of our chest. So it's not like the heart chakra. It's actually on the right side, to the right of the chakra. And what they say is that there's like a tightness, a very fundamental tightness in that area. And that's the tighter it is, the more that's an indication of like you're in ego mind, right? And what this energy does is that for what Gardner says is that for people like Buddha and Jesus Christ and like Adidas Samraj, what they did was that they permanently decontracted that heart, that source of the ego, like the separate self, with this energy. So if you, unlike, normal spiritual seekers who can only access this energy like temporarily, in their body, what it is that it's radiating permanently. So like if you even look at like the diagrams on the right and like Jesus's crucifixion, we don't really know what the historical details of that are. It's disputed. But from an esoteric perspective, you can also see that maybe the crucifixion was a symbol for enlightenment. Jesus is the crucifixion of the separate the separate self, and the awakening of, if you look at this diagram with the chakras and the two hearts, that's a diagram of the spiritual cross, right? You have the conventional 7 chakras, and then there's like a heart on the left as well. That's kind of related to like our basic like survival needs. And then you have the heart chakra, the regular heart chakra, and then on the right you have the one with the star, the black heart with the white star, and that's like the heart, that our core sense of I. And what the teacher that created this diagram, his name is Jared J. Kimball. I believe he's permanently enlightened because he described his biography as well. Really, really great insight to like talk to him via email. What he said is that, you know, once you're fully enlightened, all of these chakras are open permanently with the energy, and that spot on the right side literally flips over and merges with the crown chakra above. So, and when that happens, this circuit that you see, this orange circuit, the diagram here, that S curve is shining permanently. And that's an indication of you've transcended your separate self forever. And then, you know, that comes with things like, okay, you end reincarnation, as Buddhism claims, right? If you're fully enlightened, like you transcended your separate self, you're never reborn anymore. So, yeah. Any thoughts on that?
You know, Dan Winter, he talks about the Bai Hui, which is that point at the top of the head that it's going to, the place of 100 meeting points, as being the place where you see the most like coherence.
Yeah, heart
like
coherence.
Golden ratio level somehow. I'm not sure exactly how he's looking at that, but I mean,
yeah,
that's the crown, and but it's pulling all those things together, and you know, just to get back to the core channel of that integration, you know, where everything, you know, is all pulled together, and
right.
that's where it does it. One of the places, top of the head.
Yeah, definitely. I think with, you know, Dan Winter's work, he has like the conventional 7 chakras down, but I don't think he knows like the heart on the right. And like he hasn't really investigated that yet, based on what I've seen like in his research. But that's literally,
where exactly is this coming from, the heart on the right thing?
oh wait, who's speaking now? Terrace? I can't see you guys anymore. I don't know why.
This is me, Dason.
Oh,
I was
Dason.
just wondering about that, where this like diagram comes from.
Oh yeah, if you look on YouTube, there's a guy named Ramaji, 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 and he comes from the Advaita Vedanta tradition, non-duality. Actually, one of the pioneers, like the actual pioneer of this like spiritual cross, like the from the left to the right side of the chest, and then the second 7 chakras, that actually came from Adidas Samraj. Let me type in the chat.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, you know, maybe he'd come up with that because of, you know, some peculiarities in his own, you know, particular energetic structure that was just a way that, you know, helped him to, you know, release and find, you know, that sort of coherence.
Right. Yeah, and like the thing is, man, like I really want to talk to Dan Winter. Even I think like last week I even commented on one of his posts asking about like what his like graduate programs are. But like, dude, like he rarely like replies to people, so it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But dude, like seriously, like if you can like help me reach out to him in person, I'd really appreciate that, because man, his stuff is like super advanced.
Yeah, I'll get you in touch with somebody who has been through all of his classes, and
yeah, definitely, man.
Friends with them, so
yeah, and hopefully like I'll get to meet him in person one day. So yeah, but anything would be great. Yeah, okay, going back to that, Dason, did you try this out like just now with the breath and letting go? What did you feel?
The breath and the Which part was it that we were letting go at?
Oh yeah, at first what the practice is like, first you feel your breath and then you start to like activate the frontal line, like the loop in the body.
Oh, right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I do.
Nice.
Is I get it running, and then I just say, like it's almost like the same sort of feeling with that, like sending the energy down to the center of the earth. Because I almost think of it like it's like that Stargate, like singularity of the vortex, right. And send it back to source. And it's like the sort of reaching, that exercise where where you put out your arm and maybe they could press it down, but if you imagine that you're like stretching out to infinity,
like solidifies it.
It's sort of, you're doing that, but when you're doing that with like the top of your head or the base of your spine, there's like a it's almost like a sphincter, I guess, but it's like a vortex. It's a place of converging of energies. And so, you can't just stretch out like in a sort of linear way, but like I'll stretch, between heaven and earth, this whole vertical axis. And, everything just sort of, dissolves into that pillar in the same sort of way. My intention whenever I set it to, spin that, that circuit, you just set it to run and then it goes.
Right. Yeah. Did you guys feel the heart on the right? It's a little hard to feel if you're like just starting out, but if you get enough energy, like you should feel that spot. Like it, rather than going like from like up to down or down to up, it goes like if the energy goes like left to right through your chest. Did anyone feel that?
It looks like it's going from his right. It goes across the front of his neck and up the left side.
Yeah.
The top.
It's this like S-curve diagram, that's only like one aspect. It's like when you're fully enlightened, that S-curve like shoots up to your head. But what the actual like the full what it should really look like is if you see this third diagram on the right, where you have the 7 chakras, that's like the frontal line goes up and down, but at the same time you also have that S-curve. So both of it should be activated. What he calls it is like the spiritual cross, like it should be fully shining.
Yeah, I'll have to try that because right now it's a little difficult establishing.
Yeah, definitely.
In the middle of all this.
It'll take a while, but once you get it, man, it's like so much bliss. It's like indescribable.
Yeah, it almost feels like I've got that going on, but on the opposite side.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I also feel like going like right to left, and sometimes it's a little off, sometimes confusing at this point. But usually I feel it like going like left to right, which is what it should be. So, anyways, let's see. That you haven't talked that much about this. Did you try practice? Did you feel anything?
Are you talking to me?
No, sorry, Sushi.
No, I tried it. I need to practice this. If you have any information on this modality, please send it to me. I'd like to
I'll send it.
And I want to practice this. I think this may have validity.
Sure. Yeah. Deta, anything you would like to add?
Yeah. I'm just trying because I have never tried this one.
Sure.
And sincerely, I can feel nothing like you said. And I just feel that when we do the breathing exercise, like a burning fire is just, how can I just cover by the fluid? That's all.
Okay. You said a burning fire? Do you feel it as sort of like an energy?
Yes, like how can I say that? Whenever when I wake up, I started day like what I'm gonna do this day. What I'm gonna do, like I schedule my day like this. So I feel like it's running, and it's an running engine like that. And
Sure.
also it's a fire. Yeah. So when I close my eyes and I focus on my breathing, I feel like everything is stopped. Yeah.
Sure. So what it is, like the breathing is like the first half of it. So what the exercise was at first, breathe in and out very deeply, and then you have to be one with your breath. So like feel your breath, and then what it is that after you breathe, you let go of all the tension in your body. And what it is that this energy will come through your body. It's kind of like someone poured a big glass of water like from your head, but except that it's very, very strong. So if you're not at that point right now, like don't worry. Like if you guys
Yeah.
want to schedule like one-on-one sessions to like really like develop this, I can definitely help you guys out. Also with like Terrace and the rest of you, I'll definitely send the link where L. Ron Gardner, he talks about like all the steps. He does it a little bit differently. He talks about like like feeling your entire physical body and like uh going past that to like the empty void. I didn't mention that because I feel like using just the breath is a bit easier. But with his method, you guys might be able to generate a little bit more force. So what I described was just the breath part. He talks about the breath, but he also adds like a little bit of additional steps. I'll send you that link. You know what? Let me just do it right now in the chat. Okay.
Just gotta say, I'm working on that S curve down to the heart on the right side, and it's like it's like a lot of the tensions that I've really been working on trying to sort out with my shoulders, because I've gotten like a good strong base with like the legs and everything up to like the abdomen, but where the shoulders sit, you know, they're not so good. But it's like it's just, you know, giving things a good way to circulate and dissolve a lot of the tension that's been held.
Right.
So thanks.
One sec. So there's two articles where he describes this practice. The first one, in the first one, integral spiritual meditation, he talks about like modern day Buddhism and like Vipassana, and like how that's not actually like that's missing the energetic aspect of what the Buddha taught. But there's another one on his blog, Electrical Spirituality, where he actually links this energy to the Holy Spirit. He says that this dynamic energy is actually, you know, what God is the unmanifest, what he calls it, right? It exists outside space and time, and it's a radiant energy, sort of like the ether theory, right? Like people like Ken Wheeler talk about. But then, you know, as you access this energy through meditation and it pours through your body, that's God in its dynamic form, and that's what you call the Holy Spirit. And then once you become enlightened, what he says that is the true meaning of baptism, where you've been reborn as the Son of God. Yeah, so that's also very interesting. If you guys want to check out these two links, highly recommend it. If you scroll through like after his long explanation, you'll see like 5 or 6 steps that he outlines. And then if you just practice that long enough for a few weeks, you should definitely start to feel more energy and hopefully the S curve. So yeah, that is pretty much it for today. Just to conclude, like any final feedback for next time for me to improve on. This time I made sure to add more images, made my explanations a bit more simplistic. Yeah, but anyway, Terrace, you've left a lot of good feedback.
Link from that guy, the electric thing. I want to really investigate that. And see
Yeah, he's a
how it works.
he's one of the best like spiritual authors out there, although he doesn't teach personally. In terms of intertextual analysis, man, he also has very high standards. So if you go to Terrace, if you go to his like on his 2 blogs, there's a tab where he has like book reviews. And on there, you'll find many different traditions like Zen, Dzogchen, Kashmir Shaivism, non-dual traditions, New Age books. He's reviewed like hundreds and hundreds of books. And you should look through them and sort out his like top recommendations, and maybe like if you want to read them. But also I recommend for all of you guys, go through the links and see his like negative reviews, like his 2-star and 1-star, like the books that he really like shits on. And really try to like see why he rags on them based on this like energetic practice, and that'll really like give you such a really new perspective on like if you want to like go on like spiritual studies, like maybe like academically or whatnot. That's also a really great way to see like textual analysis, like how to critique other works.
You're saying you reviewed Kashmir Shaivism?
Yeah, he's reviewed so many traditions: Zen, Dzogchen, Kashmir Shaivism, Theravada, New Age. Like
my Taoist teacher was saying that, you know, for like the lower Dantian, the Taoists are really strong teaching. For the middle Dantian, the Buddhists have really strong teachings, and for the upper Dantian, the Kashmir Shaivism.
Wow, interesting.
I'll be interested to check into that guy's reviews on that.
Yeah, he has like a lot of reviews, and sorry, let me type in the chat. He also has a Facebook group called Meditation Consciousness Spirituality. So that's the name of his group. If you go join his group, you'll find some of his book reviews in there. I will warn you though, he is I agree with some of his political viewpoints. However, he's a really staunch like libertarian conservative. He does not like Joe Biden. So if you see a lot of like inflammatory political posts in there as well, that's what you're getting with him. So, you know, like if you don't like his politics, just like block that out. Don't maybe like I'd recommend try not like starting some like political war on his group. He has pretty strong political convictions. He's very conservative. However, in terms of his book reviews and spiritual teachings, very advanced. So with that, so it's a pretty good session. Do you guys have any more feedback? Just maybe Dason and that.
You know, I wanted to say, you were saying that was it that the Buddha was teaching about bringing in the energy, pulling in the energy like to the crown or something like that?
Yeah, that's what Gardner argues. Gardner argues what he argues is that that's what the Buddha actually taught. The Buddha didn't talk about chakras in his like passages.
Okay.
But you know, it is implied in some verses that like you have to access some sort of energy from beyond.
You know, I know somewhere in the book of John, you know, Jesus goes to a well and, you know, asks the lady to pull some water, and so she pulls some water for him, and like, you know, if you would have known who was asking, you would ask me for water, and I would have given you, you know, living water that would, you know, spring from your belly.
Right.
You know, a river of living water. And I was like, wow, you know, that's the overflowing of the lower Dantian.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Yeah, it's really those like little nuggets that like I feel like a lot of mainstream those religious communities like miss out on. But yeah, really good point. Do you want to like comment on anything, feedback?
Before this session, I thought that meditation is so boring.
Yeah.
But now I got to know that, you know, like that is the one, like, how can I say, like the energy drink, you know.
Right,
and also, I feel like it's if you do meditation, like you are having an unlimited power.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
So many questions in my daily life, so I don't know what's the answer, and I'm just looking for them on my social media, Google, but I can't get the right answer that I want. But I got to know that I can get it through meditation. Yeah, thank you so much for your sharing.
Yeah, I love hearing that. You know, like, and really, it's like that's what in our daily lives and like what we have available in terms of like mainstream academia or whatnot, or even in our friend circle, that's the extent of the information we have, like our social media, like personal development authors and gurus, but they don't go into, this is what is called like you know, esoteric, right? Esoteric is not available to the masses, the common person. I've wasted procrastinated on so many hours of schoolwork, just like making sure to get all of this material. I actually have like an archive of like hundreds of spiritual gurus and like esoteric teachings. I'll actually link that in the chat right now. But the point is that it's so that I can really provide these experiences and, ways out of suffering for, like people who aren't familiar with this space. And yeah, I just love doing that. Okay. Right, so this is my spiritual masters and teachings list. And it's basically everything I have on spirituality, the science of spirituality. Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. If you guys have anything to add, just like I'll give you like, I think I'll give you like commenting permissions. And like, if you want to comment on the Google document, you can just like add like links and sources that I'm missing. Yeah, I just want to like, my dream with this is actually once I, go back to Myanmar from the US, I want to start a university where this level of teaching is available to the masses on like a college, like an actually rigorous like college education level, like the first of its kind in the world. Like that's what I really want to do. And that's why like, collecting this information and showing people that this stuff exists, like so really powerful stuff. You see here.
That is awesome. I just want to say,
Yeah,
that's a great goal to
view,
strive for, and
comment.
glad to be in touch. This is good
Copy
stuff.
link.
Welcome to the new world.
All right. Let me see. Chat. Boom. Okay, so here's the Google Doc link. You guys can comment on it. If I'm missing, what I really want to find is like, I don't know what sources I'm missing. If there's some like obscure ass like spiritual guru out there, like just like feel free to really add it. It's pretty comprehensive, but you never know, man. If there's something that can really change people's perspective and add to spirituality, damn, like please, by all means, add to this. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll send all these links to you guys. Let me just, you know what? Screw it. Let me copy this, and just to make sure, I'll send this to you guys separately through like Facebook Messenger as well. You have another copy of this in case, but right now, just like make sure whatever links you want, just copy and paste them from the chat into like some document that you have right now. So yeah, maybe I'll give you like a few minutes to do that. In the meantime, as you're doing that, final thoughts, just anyone?
To do what? Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I just gotta give you guys a few minutes to like copy and paste the links.
Oh, gotcha.
You have them? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, this has been really cool. One of the things, I haven't read it, but I know Gopi Krishna writes a book about Kundalini, and what I know about the book is that he went through a lot of troubles in going about raising the Kundalini. Maybe he might have experienced things like pain, and it's just good to have instruction and guidance, I think, in developing the awareness, and because whenever we don't have these teachings, sometimes things can be really difficult.
Yeah, definitely. One is that it feels like you have no way out of your troubles, right? And also with the Kundalini thing, this is just a caution for you guys and like all spiritual seekers who'll be watching this later. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have a good guru to guide you through the pitfalls, then you could really screw up with that kind of, especially with the upward Kundalini, the conventional Kundalini energy. The energy I talked about from the crown chakra pouring down, that's not really Kundalini. Some people call it like higher Kundalini versus like the conventional lower Kundalini from the base of the spine. But with the base of the spine energy, the regular snake-like Kundalini energy, there's a lot of problems with that if you don't know what you're doing, especially like there's like one teacher who like raised it not from like the spinal column but like through the side, and then he had like really severe pains that he had to like process out, and like really messed up his mental state. So yeah, just proceed with caution. By all means do try those things, but yeah, just like make sure, like even like things like diet, you know, like you really have to get your diet right, and like don't eat too many like cooked foods with like kundalini, because it like contracts your body. Yeah, things like that. So
Yeah, I know Jerry Johnson's got I think it's his second volume of his textbook series on medical qigong. He talks about chi deviations, and one that he himself had experienced was in trying to, you know, open the third eye, and he's forcing this energy upward, and he gave himself a chi deviation where his eyes were kind of looking a little funny,
oh shit.
and it was making people uncomfortable, and he didn't like, you know, he had this chi deviation that he induced, and it wasn't until he ended up in China around, you know, this master who saw it and was like, what did you do to yourself? You know, oh, you fixed the energy, you idiot, you don't ever do that, you know. And he, you know, and he fixed them, and but yeah, that's the story. Because I mean, if he had never come into contact with a master with that ability, he'd just been, you know, he'd have had that chi deviation and just had to deal with it.
Yeah, very true, man. Like the importance of spiritual masters, right? Yeah, like, and again, right, like even though we have our higher self where we're free of all this, we're home, also in the conventional world where we have to fulfill our survival needs and stuff like that, that bleeds into our spiritual practice, right? And we, even though we can, you know, be love and light all we want, we also have to proceed with caution. And I believe like true meditation is really that balance of like presence being like tending to our needs, and then surrender is like love and unity. So all of this like really ties together into, it's not only just an esoteric practice, but it gets to the core of human suffering and how to transcend it. And that is in closing, to conclude this session, that is the way to really create permanent change in the world. Yeah, anyways, guys, yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on today. Yeah, I hope to see you guys next time. And if you have friends who will watch this, you know, video and are interested, please like definitely refer them to this, and we'll have like hopefully more students next week. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you. Goodbye.